This is going to be the 2026 Fusion 360
Balsa wood tower.
Balsa wood tower
Tutorial number 1.
tutorial number 1 by David Fatane.
Wonderful. Give him a clap. Wonderful. Okay, so you're going to start with your Fusion file. Now, you might not have a screen like this if you've just downloaded a new version of Fusion. You might have some screen saying, what do you do with your Fusion? Or might ask you to make a team thing. Doesn't matter with the team, just pick a name for it. Remember, it is your school account, so pick something sensible. Also, the most common thing you're going to be doing is you're going to be doing part design. Is your most common thing you're going to be doing in Fusion, so pick that as the setting. What I think that does is it sets your default, so every time you load up Fusion, it defaults in what system you're going to be loading up in. Are you going to be in part design, or are you going to be in one of like the electronic options, drawing? So most of our time, we're going to be in design, and specifically part design is the area that we're going to be in. So when we start, we can go File, New. You might get something looking like this. And so part design is the one that we're going to do. For our first task, our first 2 tasks, this will be fairly simple. It's only when we start dealing with parts that move relative to each other that we have to do other versions of this. But you can do a very big model by making a single part. And we'll press Create New. And what that means up here, I've already had one. So one of them's called Untitled. You have Untitled 1. And if you can have multiple projects open at the same time if you want. So I'm just going to close the original one. This is the screen. Some things you need to know. We can have a grid. I like to have a grid here to see where the base is. And over here we have our cube where we can rotate our objects by clicking our mouse and dragging. And now I usually like to do this using a mouse, but my mouse isn't working today. So I'm going to be like plebs like you, and I'm going to be using the trackpad as well, which is slower. If you have a mouse, it's much better, in my opinion, to use Fusion. So Fusion is an additive CAD software. CAD meaning computer-aided design. Additive means you start with simple shapes and objects and you make them into more complex objects. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make we know we have the tower for our assessment task. We're going to first draw these 2 boxes. So we know our object has to be smaller than one of them and larger than the other box. So we'll start by making the larger box at the bottom. So how we do this in Fusion is we start our objects by making sketches. So we'll press this sketch button over here, which is this top left, and I believe sketch also doesn't have a shortcut. But up here in solids, so over here, see how at the top of this bar we have solid, we have surface, we have mesh. These are all other forms of things you can do with Fusion. For everything I tell you, we're going to be in the solid realm because all of our objects are going to be solid. If you accidentally press over here and you see your objects are like orange or purple or yellow, these are all, it means you're in the wrong area. We are in the solid area. All our objects are going to be solid. We're going to make a sketch. So what sketches do, like when you're doing it on paper, you get a piece of paper and you start drawing and that's your sketch. Fusion, we do the same thing. We get a surface, a flat thing. We pick our flat thing and we start drawing on that flat thing. So if we're going to make the box at the bottom, what shape is the bottom of the box? It's a square. And we're going to make that square and then we're going to turn that into a cube. So we're going to get our sketch tool. The first thing we do is it asks us to select a plane of where to do our sketch. And also, if you're ever confused in Fusion, if you just hover over the object and if you hover over the command, it gives you instructions. Over here, it says enter sketch mode, where you create geometry profiles that define the foundations of a design. Then use commands to extrude and resolve or loft it to create 3D things. So that tells you what this command is. And then the second thing, it tells you how to use it. Select a construction plane, and then you create lines and arcs and points to make a sketch. So the construction plane is the first thing we're doing. That's basically the sheet of paper we want. So it's saying difference between us if we make a sketch in this direction versus if we do a sketch in this direction. We're picking how we want to make that sketch. So what we're going to do is we're going to press this bottom section over here. If this is missing on your drawing, over here on the side where it says origin, click that light to make sure the eye is open, and open that and make sure you have these with the eyes on. So that means it's visible. The one we want to select is this one down the bottom, the X and Y. We click this, and what it does is it rearranges the screen to look in our direction. So we want to make a square. And notice as soon as I click that, all the options over here change. And notice how we're not in the solid form anymore. We've opened up a new one over here called sketch. And we only can do our sketch command when we're in a sketch. So Fusion has automatically moved us to there. So now that we're sketching, we want to create a rectangle, because a square is just a rectangle, right? For this particular one, we want to make a rectangle, and for this one, we're going to make it using the center of a rectangle. So this creates a rectangle using 2 points. You define one as the center and one as a corner. So we'll click this and we'll click that tool. First, we select the center. Notice as we bring our mouse, it's trying to attach, it's trying to snap to the grid behind us, which is fine because we want to start from the very center. As we bring our mouse over here, we should see a little blue square around that hole, which means that's it's locking on to that location on our grid. And that's our point 0. I've pressed the mouse button, and now as I try to drag my point around, it's starting to make a square. So I can pick a point, I can drag my square out if I want, and I can pick it, but we want to be more accurate when we do Fusion. Now, what was the dimensions of our square? Who remembers? Yes.
150 by 150 by 100 millimeters.
So 100 is the height.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So 150 by 150 is the base. So what we can do in Fusion, see how right now it's got that cursor thing on that side saying where it's 144.224, right? I'm going to type in there. I'm going to type 150, and it's in millimeters, right? So you can put 150 millimeters. So now I've put in that dimension, I've forced that dimension. I can then move my mouse to the bottom, or I find it easy to press the tab button, which goes to the next one. And see how that's now highlighted in blue. And as I press that tab, what do we see next to the 150 on the left? We see a padlock. This padlock means that because we've put in the number of 150, now that command is locked. It can't, even if I try to move my mouse around, that height that we've selected, so I mean height from a sketch point of view, so that dimension will always be 150. So even if I move my mouse in that up and down, it's not going to change it from 150 because that's dimension is locked. I'll do another 150 here and I'll press enter. Now watch what happens to our rectangle when I press the enter button. Notice its background right now. The background color is like white or transparent. As soon as I press enter, what has changed to the background color? It's blue. It's blue. This means in Fusion, it has determined that this shape we've made is what's called a closed surface or a closed shape, which means like end to end, there's no gaps. So this is what we need to turn into a 3D object. So I've then finished the sketch, and as you do the finished sketch, it changes back to like a 3D view. We want to turn this into a 3D object. We're going to do the next command, which is called the extrude command. Most of your time in Fusion is going to be making a sketch and then extruding it. That is most of the operations you'll be doing. Press the extrude button. By default, it presses the last shape you've done, but if you don't want that, we can, over here we have our tools, or not our tools, our options we want to do for our extrusion. So you see over here the command is extrude. Yes, that's the command we want to do. Different versions over here. We can do a thick extrude or a thin extrude. I don't know what the difference between those are. Oh, I can do open profile. Okay. Profiles, that's saying what is our shape we want to extrude. I'm going to delete that now to show you how you would click it if there's multiple options. You just click the shape you want. Now, as you bring it over there, it's kind of hard for you to see on the projector, but as you bring the mouse over, it highlights itself. That's the shape we want. And I click it, and then it goes into a darker blue. we wanted stuff on the profile plane. That makes sense. One side. And now we can pick the direction. This is the height that we want, which we already said was 100. And as soon as I press 100, notice how it turns into a 3D looking object. And then for now, everything else here is fine. We'll just press enter. We'll press OK. Now, before I press OK, notice here on the left, this is our parts of the project we currently have. We have our origin, which is where our planes were. We have our sketches because we've made a sketch, but there's no bodies here yet. When I press OK, now we have bodies. Bodies are like our objects that we deal with. That's the main thing we're going to be creating with this sketch. And if we look at bodies, it's even got a name, body 1. I can right click this body 1 and I want to rename this. I need to rename this what the base is. And this is going to be the all right, some students have if you have your cube over here, and let's say something weird has happened, like you got a weird looking view, your cat jumps on your mouse, the computer mouse hopefully, and then you're in a weird shape like this, and you're like, oh my gosh, where is my design? Life is terrible, right? Over here in the top right-hand corner, this is the thing that changes your view always. So you can, if you click your mouse over it, it rotates your object around, which is hard to tell right now because we're so zoomed in. But over here, this image of the house, what this does is no matter where you are, it will try to zoom out so you get the whole of your project to fit it on the screen and to get you into some sort of isometric 3D view. So if you're ever confused about where you're looking, as long as you're not doing a sketch, because it's not good for a sketch, because we want to look at a sketch straight on. If we're looking at a sketch from an angle, it's not going to look good. It's not going to give us accurate numbers. But for us seeing our thing in 3D, we press that house button and then look, there's no place like home. We have our cube over there. And this is very important. If you're doing like your height thing and instead of 100 millimeters, you accidentally typed 100 centimeters, that's a very huge piece there. And so you might not even be able to zoom out correctly, but you press that home button, it'll have it merging there so you can see your thing. There's also sometimes you get like a little part and you press a digit in the wrong area and this part is like a kilometer to the side now and you don't know what's happening. But if you zoom out, it's like, oh, there's clearly something all the way to the side if I've zoomed out that much, and you can find that thing. But over here you have body 1. So we're going to right click this body and we're going to rename this body. And we can call this, what should we call this? Base box? Lower box, probably. Lower box. Lower box must be greater than, right? That is the name of that thing. That thing now has a name. Lower box must be greater than. Cool. So now we have to do the upper box. So we have to do a sketch. We're going to do a sketch and then we're going to do the box from there. And notice this box over here, I've just made this solid even though our real box is hollow, but that's fine because we just have to do the outside. So to do this, we are going to start by making a new construction plane because we want basically we're doing a new piece of paper that we want to sketch on. When we want to do sketches, sometimes in our design, we can do sketches directly on an object. So we can press sketch. We can sketch on these new surfaces because the surfaces of a rectangular prism are flat. So we can do that. Even a triangular prism or even a pyramid. Those are flat surfaces. We can do sketches on them. If it was a curved surface, we cannot do sketches on a curved surface. Planes also, by definition, are flat surfaces as well. So we need to make a new plane. So I've just pressed escape right now. So I'm not this is no longer highlighted. We want to go to construction and I want to press this tab down and I want to do what's called an offset plane. So what an offset plane does is I want to make a new plane that is some distance offset from a previous plane. So I want to offset. The plane I want to offset is this one down here. But the issue I have now is when I try to select it, It's selecting the surface of the body that we just made, because that's the first thing the mouse is clicking. The plane is underneath that, correct? Yeah. So there's two ways we can select it. We can either go over here and hide the body to select the plane, but as we start doing a more complicated design, it's going to get more difficult for that to happen because we might have to hide multiple bodies. So the other option we do is if we highlight, well, this thing is behind it. If I hold down the mouse button, what it does here is it gives you an option of all the things this mouse could possibly be clicking. So imagine it like it shoots a laser beam through multiple objects, and which things did it touch? And if we scroll through it over here, we can see the first thing it touched was the face, right? And then if we scroll down, the next thing it touched was the XZ plane. And actually, it also touched the bottom as well, because if it goes through the cube, it's going to also touch the bottom face as well. So this is useful for when we want to select something specific in our design, which is obviously going to be very important when you have a whole bunch of individual members that you're making. You want to click the exact one that you want. So this is the XZ is the one we want. And then the distance is we want to do the offset plane. Now, how high should this offset plane be? How high should your tower be? Yeah?
30 centimeters.
30 centimeters. Now, you said 30 centimeters, and this is in millimeters. So this is a great example for Fusion is somewhat smart, right? Somewhat smart. If I tell it 30 centimeters, it automatically converts it into millimeters for us, which is wonderful for us to work with. We can just put in our units and we can put that in there. So 30 centimeters, done. And now this plane is all the way up here. If I didn't know where this plane was, I could just press the home button and then, wow, it shows up, right? So now I can do my sketch on this offset plane. And I believe over here, this plane now exists here. Plane 1. So I can even rename this plane. I can rename this to 300 millimeter height. Right. I'm going to go to sketch. I'm going to click this plane over here. What is the dimensions of this one?
75 by 75 by 80 millimeters.
80 or 85?
80.
80, okay. And 80 is the height. Right? Yeah, 75, 75. Okay, this one, we're going to do something a bit different. I'm going to show you the other way to make a shape in Fusion. We already did it with a square. We're going to make it using a line. So line we do point to point. So for us to do the line, and I'm going to deliberately make this bad, and then we'll fix it up after. So I click the point, cool. And now when you do a line, I press my first point over here. I have the choice of a distance and an angle. So our distance we said was 70, so I can do 70. And then our angle, 90. Okay. I press enter and I can do it again. This one we click here and we'll go out here and I want this to be 70. And yep, enter. And then we can go again. So we're making 4 individual lines. 70. So over here, do we see how the center is of this shape? It's clear. It's not a closed shape. Once we do this last one, I didn't have to measure this one because if my things are correct, if I just drag this along, and if I click to this spot over here, it's now blue. So now this is a closed shape. So this could turn, I can make this into a 3D object. Except we want our object to be inside this. So in this sample that I'm holding here, this is actually the inside, correct? But we want our shape to be, we want it to look like, if we want it to look like this object I'm holding up here, we want to get the outside. So we're going to use another tool as well. We're going to use the offset tool. Offset means we pick a sketch element, so a curve or a line, and it draws another line that is, I use the word parallel, but in the sense of like train lines are parallel. That because parallels have to be straight lines, but it's basically the curves or whatever, all the lines are the same distance apart. So I press this, and if I press these curves here, and I press this arrow, see it's going to make another line that is perfectly offset. It's going to be the same distance apart. And for this distance, we might as well make it like our example, which is 3 millimeters. And then we'll press enter. So that's our shape there. We can turn this into a 3D shape, but it's also not in the right location, right? Because we want it to be right on the top. We don't want it to be all the way out here. That would be a very bad tower. So how we're going to do this is we're going to add some dimensions. If we go to create, we can go to create sketch dimension. Well, we can say, all right, we want this to be aligned here. So some things we're going to have to change. This top part over here, I want the dimension between this line and here. What do I want this dimension to be? Who can think of that maths? Between the top, do you see how I've zoomed in? Between this line over here, what number? 35. How did you arrange that number in your mind? Half of 70. Wonderful. So I said Fusion is somewhat smart, right? Half of 70, you can put simple formulas into Fusion 360. You can say 70 divided by 2 in Fusion, and when you press enter, it automatically does that maths for you. So it's good for finding like the midpoints. You can even get Fusion to do maths on lengths that you don't even have to know yet. So we can do the same thing and say the distance between this point and this point. I want this to be, if that's our distance 70, I can press that there, and notice as there's D7, it's saying whatever this dimension over here is, I want half of that. And that's how it brings that line in there. Because we've forced those distances to be 35 and 35. So it puts it in the center. For your one, you're not really changing stuff, so it doesn't matter. But later, when you learn more complicated Fusion things, when you change the dimensions, and if you want something to always be in the middle, maybe you're designing something that's symmetric, like you're making an aeroplane, and you have your wings, and you want to change your wing length, but you want your engines to move with your wing length, so you want it to be a formula based on the wing length. So that's why you can select other dimensions. You can use a dimension for another dimension. All right, we finished this sketch, and if we go into 3D view now, we have that. We're going to then extrude this shape. We're going to press the extrude, and we don't want to extrude this whole shape. We just want to extrude the outside part. So notice here when I press the extrude, it didn't automatically select the whole thing because it's like, hey, there's actually multiple things here. I'm not going to automatically select it for you. We want to extrude, correct, our profile. When we hover over it, we have two options. We have this inside profile and we have this outside profile. Now, I can see on my screen, it's highlighting them. I don't know if you can see it on the projector. When I have my mouse in the middle one is highlighted. When I have it on the border one, that's highlighted. We want to select the border one. So if I click it, notice how it goes into darker blue. That is the shape that I want to extrude. And we said that's 80 millimeters. So we can type in 80 and catastrophe, calamity. Is that the right direction? No. Is it 85? Check the assessment task notification, please. I do have a box in front of me. My box says 85. It's all right. That's why mistakes. That's why we're doing Fusion and not drawing it, because instead of doing 80, we can just type 85. But it's actually not 85 because where did that profile start? It started at 300, which is the maximum height. If we can type negative 85, and it's going to go down. So that is our shapes that we want. We want our thing to be smaller than this one and larger than this one. And we can even rename this. We can say this is upper body. Upper body must be less than. Okay. So now we can start making our shapes. We've got our two bodies over here. Wonderful. So I'm going to try to speed run this part a little bit. But do we have these two shapes? What's the issue? You got the border? Hold on.
You explain the offsetting again.
All right, okay. Yeah, I'll explain the offsetting. But I won't mess my original one. I'll mess up a new one. Okay. So you have a shape over here. right? I have a shape. It doesn't have to be a closed shape, but we have a shape. And then if I press the offset tool, I have options. The curves I want is the lines that I've just made. So I click that. And then I got to get this arrow. I have to tell it, do I want the offset to be outside or inside? So for this shape, I just want it to be outside. And it does like that red line. And then I pick the thickness that I want. So I want how far I want this line to be apart. So in this case, I want it to be -3. And that's going to be that offset. That'll be the offset. And offsets can also work for curved shapes as well. In fact, they're really good for curved shapes. Offsets do have a bit of an issue. Like once you get your offset shape too much that it cuts into itself, that can cause problems. So it's just an issue you got to deal with. So they're great at like little lines, which is great for us when we're doing like our stuff, which is going to be 5mm. It's going to look good for that. That's our offset shape there, which means that if I was to change my original shape, both the lines should follow. Right? If I go over here and actually change my original shape in my design, can I move it? If I change my original shapes, the offset will also follow. Oops, I'm lost. Finish sketch. Home. Now I'm just going to delete that sketch because I don't need that sketch. So say you do a sketch you don't want. Over here on the left, the last sketch now we've made multiple sketches. We've made 2 sketches. We did one for the base and we did the one for the top. Once you've used the sketch, once you've extruded a sketch or turned it into a 3D object, Fusion by default hides that sketch. But you might want to use it again for some reason. You might have multiple parts you want to make from it. So you just got to go there and you've got to unhide the sketch and then it exists again. It's still here now. Or you might want to delete the sketch you don't want. All right, click delete. All right, let's make the posts. And we'll make the posts here. So we'll start by, we want to sketch. I want to sketch on this base. So we know we want to make our pillars, and we know our thing is going to be 5 by 5mm. So we know it's going to roughly look like a square out here, right? It's going to roughly look like something like that, right? But we want to be a bit more specific. We have Fusion, we may as well be specific. We want to actually use the object we have here to base it off. The issue we have in Fusion is because it's there visibly, doesn't mean it's actually there on the sketch. This Fusion tries not to interrupt our sketch with other objects that exist there. But we want to tell Fusion, hey, I actually do want to use this object, this body that I've created for my sketch. And this is probably the most important tool you can learn. It's going to save you so much effort. Under Create, we want to use the project/include, which means I can physically see this object. I want to use this object as like a guide or a reference in my sketch. So project and include, press the project button, and we can select some things. So I want to select the body, this body over here, the lower body. And then when I press OK, if we've done this correctly, it should start rendering some purple lines for us. So I'll press OK. And now it's got some purple lines, and it's going to be easier to see the purple lines when I hide the body. Do you see it's got these purple lines? That means that now those are in my sketch and I can use them. So I'm going to use that purple line to make a rectangle. I'm going to click this point, and we know our rectangle is going to be tab 5. That's how big my rectangle is. So now I know I'm going to have the rectangle post, which I'll turn into 3D at some point. It's going to be right up against the corner of the box. I can finish that sketch. I can now go back into 3D. And then I can, we don't need these sketches anymore. Oh, I do need that sketch. We can hide, we can show this body again. So now I'm going to make this, I'm going to press the extrude button. I want to extrude this. How high has this got to be? Well, now we get a design choice, right? So we might want to visibly go here and say, well, how high do I want this to be? I want this to be, I think it should be at least 100, but I'm going to go a bit higher for the sake of my design. I want it to be 110. That's how high I want my bosswood piece to be there. And I'll press OK. And it's going to be my first element. I'm going to do the same thing with the top here. I'm going to go to Sketch. Looks like that plane we had over there has disappeared. That's fine. If I go to Construction, because we used it, Fusion, when you used it, it tries to clean your drawing because when you do a big project, you'll have hundreds and thousands of things. So it tries to hide them for you. But if you know you've used something, just go back and say, well, I know this thing exists. I'm going to reveal it again. I'll make a sketch over here. Same thing as before. I want to include, but which shape do I want to include this time? The bottom or the top? The top one. So I can either click it, I can even click it over here. I can say, click it over here. I want the upper body. And I press enter. And then let's say I just want to hide the rest of the body to make my thing nice and clean. Or actually, no, I don't want to hide this one. I do want to see where this is, so now I'm on the right side. So I want to make this one over here. 5x5, enter, cool, done. Let's then bring this down. Extrude. Press that shape. And we want it to go down. Oops, a daisy. Wrong shape. I pressed the wrong buttons. I just want to press this one. I want to drag this down. Now, as I'm dragging this down, we got to be careful because this is our first time that it's going to be a bit of an issue here. Under the operation, we're saying what we want this extrusion to do to our design. I said that Fusion is an additive software. So it always thinks you're trying to add stuff to a previous design. And add, in the mathematical sense, is the same as subtraction. I know it's weird. It's like we're saying when add, I mean I want this thing to impact the next thing is basically what we're saying. So I did this shape. It's touching the other body that exists there. And so what it's saying is, oh, you want these to be joined together, obviously. You want to like draw this shape, but we don't want them drawn together, but it's assuming you do, right? If you imagine you're building like a chair, you start with the base where your butt's going on the chair, and then you draw the legs. You want them all to be attached. But we don't want that. So in this case, instead of join, we want to press this thing. We want to do a new body because we want our pieces to be a new body. And we present it. And we can see here some features that represent that to check. Notice how here there's a black line showing it's a new body. And if we hover over it, we see it's its own body. If I press the join, body 4 wouldn't exist. And when I highlighted this, it would have had both things connected together. This will be a slight mistake you'll do very regularly. And let's actually show you what will happen if you did do that mistake. If you did that mistake, over here down the bottom, you look at your history. It says these are all the actions we've done so far. Actually, not that many. If we right-click this and we press Edit Feature, right, you can go and you can edit. So let's say you did the mistake of join. Over here, we see up. Over here, oh no, I've joined them together. We can see how there's not that black. Can I zoom in? Over here, you see how there's not that black line there anymore? They're connected together. Oh no, my entire project is ruined. No, because we're doing it on Fusion. We can go over here. We can right-click this feature. Right-click it. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring up all this table over here that we had previously. And this is where we can change it, and it should update everything. So instead of join, I said, my mistake was I pressed join here. I don't want to join. I want to do a new body. And then press OK. Cool. All right, we're almost done 1/4 of our thing. If I'm going to hide, we don't need our upper and lower body anymore. But what we do need now is these obviously have to be connected together. Right? These two parts have to be connected together. So there's, is there an easy way to do this? Probably not. I toiled around trying to think of an easy way to do this, but this is an object. We need to get some sort of stick to connect it together. We have to do some sort of sketch. The problem is we don't have a plane right now that works with these sketches because this is at like a weird angle. I realize the bell's about to ring. So I'm going to show you how we do this angle, and I'll show you how we do the sketch. We should do it in under 2 minutes. We need to make a new plane, and this plane is, we're going to do a plane with 3 points. Because we have these two shapes here, this will work. We're going to pick 3 points. The 3 points we're going to pick is this point, and this point. So what we do here, if I go in 3D mode, we see here it's like halfway between that. Cool. And now I can do sketching. We want to sketch on this plane over here. We want to include these 2 objects that we have. Right? We want to include this one and we want to include this one. Press OK. Then we want to make a line. We want to join this top one, this, to that, this, to that, and now it's gone dark blue. This is not perfect because the actual dimension between this and this is not exactly 5. It's actually 5.8, but it's close enough for our things. So now that's the thing there. We can then extrude it. Press that shape. You want to extrude. Now, because this is halfway in the middle there, we can't just go out 5 over here because it's going to look weird, right? So instead of one side, we're going to use the symmetric tool. And instead of it being 5, we want to do half of 5 because we're doing 2.5 and 2.5. 2.5, right? And if we do 2.5, hold up, yep, 2.5. Now, before you leave for assembly, we'll finish this and we'll do the other side's next lesson. You need to save Fusion. It's not like Google. So I'll show you how to save. We've got to save, pick a file. This is, we're stage 5. So this will be the, what do we call it? The 2026 Fusion 9 ENT tower tutorial parts 1. Right? You save that and you got to press save and you got to give it time to upload because it's a cloud-based software. Give it time to upload and then you should know when it's done that by, you should just be able to close. And just preference, over the weekend, please update your Fusion because I'm going to update mine. So when we do our next tutorials next week, we can do that.